Welcome, welcome, welcome. Welcome to another episode of Off the Cuff with Cliff. Hello, Sheba. I think you met Sheba before. She's my co-host, guest, and friend. And Sheba says I have a problem. She says I don't listen. Is that what you told me, Sheba?
Sometimes you don't.
I don't listen. And you know what? I'm going to say it. Off the cuff, Sheba's right. But it's not just me, it's everybody. I have had this problem where when somebody's talking to me, I am thinking about what my response is going to be instead of actually hearing the message. What do you think about that, Sheba?
I think we're all guilty of this.
We're all guilty of that.
And, some of us have people that do that to us. We might not do it in some situations, but there might be people in our lives that we're always doing it with.
Have you ever been in a situation where before you even have that talk, you've already have in your mind what you're going to say?
Oh, of course.
Right?
Yeah.
And then they throw you for a loop and they tell you something else. For a loop.
Yes.
And then you don't know what to do.
Then you're stuck because you already had this planned out what you're going to say, but the delivery wasn't what you thought. So now you have nothing to say and you get frustrated and you don't get your point across.
Right. And you just brought up a very, very valid thing, right? It's you're not going to get your point across. It's what you say, how you say it, the delivery, the energy that's around you, the place where it's at. So communication, if you got all that other stuff right, people still might not hear you, huh?
Correct.
Yeah. When I was in high school, I was on the debate team. So my mind always works in the form of arguments. So every time I have a conversation, now that we're having this conversation,
that makes sense now.
It makes sense to me now that
sense.
as people are talking to me, I'm waiting for something to be confrontational. And I think you know me well enough that if there's going to be a confrontation, I'm going to cause the confrontation because I want to clear the air. But I think all through my life, or mostly through my life, when I had conversations, especially if I knew it was going to be a debate or an argument, I'm prepared.
Right. You're ready to go. You got the guns out.
I got the guns out, and I'm just ready to do it. But what do you do so you're not thinking about a response? Because you're a good communicator. You're great with your staff. You get your message across. When people network with you. I mean, you had an event today, and people are texting you what a wonderful job you had. Kudos to you. What makes you such a great communicator?
I mean, well, first of all, I think I'm a good communicator in the business realm. I can't say that so much in the personal realm. It's still a journey I'm working on.
When you say personal realm, you mean with your children,
with
with
my
your
children,
family?
with my spouse, with family. Family dynamics are complicated, right? And when you've known your family for their whole life or your whole life, I'll bring up one example. Like spouses tend to have, there's that one argument you have forever, right? You have the same argument for 20 years.
Right.
So
and sometimes I have the argument and I forget what we argued about, and my wife will get mad because she still thinks I'm arguing with her and I don't even know what we're arguing about anymore.
Right. So I mean, those, you've had that speech and you say the same speech forever. But that's different when you're, dealing with a team or a colleague or a networking someone networking. But I do think that the art of listening is something that is not discussed enough. And it's something that we can use in every facet of our life, because conflict resolution is a life skill.
Oh, we're going to go to conflict resolution.
And
one of my favorite subjects.
If you're not listening,
you're not hearing,
and you're not going to have any resolution on either end.
Right. So when it comes to conflict resolution, have you ever had an argument or a disagreement and their comeback is always the same? Well, you're insecure. Oh, it's all about you, or it's all about, because they don't really have a point to bring up.
Correct.
But they know how to get under your skin. Does that happen?
Yeah, they know the buttons to push.
They know the buttons to push, and then they push those buttons, and the next thing you know, things sometimes go down a hill, a snowball faster than they should.
Right. So, let's say you have a colleague that always calls you a control freak.
Okay.
Right.
Are you a control freak?
I used to be. I'm working on it. Working on being reformed.
A reformed
Let's say you have a colleague that always calls you a control freak. This is completely hypothetical.
Sure it
is. And, you're talking about a particular incident, and then they start to push your buttons,
Right.
And now you're not talking about what you were arguing with. You're not talking about the subject at hand. And now you fly off the handle, and then you talk about what they're doing wrong. And they go, see,
right.
You're a control.
They personalize
freak.
it. Right.
So now they've turned the table, and now at the end of it, you're back to where you started.
And you're being defensive.
now you're being
at that point.
defensive, and now
Sure.
you look like a control freak.
Sure. So Sheba just shared a confession. Thank you, Sheba, for sharing that with us. But no, you're absolutely right. And the opposite is also right. So when you have a lot of employees, and in my case, we owned seven businesses at one time, and I don't know, we had a couple hundred employees. When you're an employer, you know how to push their buttons too, right?
Oh yeah.
So and sometimes that's good, and sometimes that's bad. But from a professional standpoint, and you differentiated the two, right? Your professional communication and your personal communication is totally different, right?
Totally different.
Totally different, because
But communication rules apply.
the rules still apply. The rules still apply, and you called it an art of listening. Is it an art of listening or an art of hearing?
Listening.
Listening.
You have to really. I guess it's.
I'm
both.
going to argue with you. No. I'm listening to you right now, but I'm not hearing you.
Oh, you're right. No, it's
Right?
an art of hearing.
Right?
It's an art of hearing.
Now, I'm
You're
not a
right.
scientist.
Yeah, no,
But I
you're
think
right.
hearing is when it's going through my brain
Right.
and my.
Because
fruit
hearing is
diablo,
when you're
whatever it's called.
processing, right?
Okay.
Listen is just the sound, right?
Okay.
The hearing is the processing. You're
Okay.
absolutely right. It's the art of hearing.
Okay.
And,
So you're saying I'm right for a change?
Yeah. I mean, are we going to argue semantics now? No, the art
No.
of hearing, yes.
Okay.
Process it. Really hear what they're saying, right? Take it in. Don't be so. We don't always have to give the answer immediately.
Right.
We can take a minute. We can actually say to the person, "All right, I hear what you're saying.
Right.
Let me think about this."
And we're definitely being off the cuff here and say, hey, look, I know there were times that I sometimes gave a wrong message, and when somebody was calling me out on it, rather than admit I was wrong, I just continue down that path to make it worse.
Right. And when you say to someone, especially if it's a conflicting conversation, if you say to someone, "I hear what you're saying, let me think about it," immediately you diffuse it.
Sure.
You've already thrown water on
Sure.
the fire, because
Sure.
now they're going, "Oh, wait a minute. They don't want to fight back. They want to
Right.
actually process this and figure out what they're going to say." They're expecting you to come back at them with fire.
Right.
And you just doused it.
So let me ask you something. When you get in an argument, does your voice get louder? Do you try to overpower the other person with your voice?
I try not to. That's something that I consciously work on. But I'm naturally a very animated person.
So I have this I guess growth spurt in my development, where when I would get in an argument, I would get louder and louder and louder and louder and louder. And I went to a conflict course, and in the conflict course, and it took me a while to understand this, but when I didn't realize it, but as I was getting louder, people that I was arguing with were talking softer and softer and softer. And if you talk softer and softer and softer when someone's getting louder and louder, they start talking softer and softer and don't even realize it.
I don't realize it.
They don't even realize that's what's going on there. I think that's very, very interesting.
And I've noticed it with my kids, because I tend to be a yeller, so that's something I've been consciously working on for the last couple of years. So now when it's really, really bothering me, I talk in a very low, monotone voice.
Okay.
And they kind of stop in their tracks and they listen.
Okay.
They hear me, and they also feel when they respond. I think they feel heard. It's not just a shouting match now. Right. So they're not tuning out. They also, on the converse, if it is something that they think maybe they screwed up, when I talk low, they are like, "Oh, I messed up."
Right.
Whereas if I'm screaming, they're like, "Mm-hmm."
Yeah. They already shut you.
It's like Charlie Brown.
Yeah, they're
right?
tone
The
deaf.
teacher,
Right.
Charlie Brown teacher.
Yeah.
So they just tune you out.
Yeah. I'm at a point where when I have an argument with my children, they're both very, very bright. I have to sometimes think about what they're saying, because they use big words. And sometimes I'm not sure, is my daughter complimenting me, or is she
insulting
me? But no, I mean, lovingly,
of course.
The conversations, but we can have some real heated debates. And my daughter Keisha, especially, she'll remember something that happened 10 years ago, and somehow or other it comes up in a conversation.
That's great.
Just to remind me of where we once were. So
healthy debates are always good, though. I mean, I always love a healthy debate. But I will say, I was in a situation recently where this woman was being really, really impatient in a store, and I mean, my order was it was stuck. I mean, it was the cashier, something was going wrong and it was just taking them really long. And I'm just standing waiting, and this woman behind starts just screaming her head off.
Sure.
And she gets in this conflict with this cashier. Then the manager comes, and I'm watching. The manager came, and the manager immediately started yelling back, and I could see how this whole thing evolved. The cashier backed off. Now it's the manager and this woman fighting, and they're screaming at each other, and everyone's observing this, and you could just see how both of them were right and both of them were wrong.
Right.
And no one was hearing one another, and the entire situation could have been diffused and over in 1/4 of the time, but they dragged that out so long
Because they were both trying to prove each other right.
because they were both trying to be the more powerful.
Got it.
It's like he got louder, she got louder,
Right.
she got in his face, he got in her face, and it was so self-destructive. But it was actually interesting to observe, because we've all been in situations like this
Sure.
before, and just being on the outside, I'm just watching this and I'm thinking, like, wow, they're both just really losing right now. No one's winning this argument.
Right.
And it was a fascinating social observation. We're all guilty of that.
Do you think every argument has a winning or a winner?
No, and I think that's actually really key to either leadership or teamwork, and that can fall whether in business or your personal life, whether you're either a leader or a team member in that dynamic at the moment. There doesn't always have to be a winner. It could just be, we can agree to disagree.
Right. Some
Right?
people can agree to disagree, but they still want to carry on, right?
And they still want to carry on.
They still want to carry on.
It's okay to agree to disagree. It's okay to have differences of opinion and just come to a conclusion of respect.
Okay.
Right? So
Sure.
it's like, I respect you for this opinion.
Sure,
You
sure.
respect me for this. And that was a good debate.
Sure.
That's a healthy debate.
Right.
Right? It doesn't have to be not every debate has to be an argument.
That's true. No, sometimes you can debate just to get your point across, right?
Correct. But every argument starts
Influence.
out as a debate.
As a debate, right? And like I said, I was wired that if we're having a conversation, what's her ulterior motive? Is that the word?
Ulterior motive?
Yeah, whatever I just said. Yeah, it's one of those things. And I'm already trying to figure out how I'm going to respond to that, how I'm going to top that, how I'm going to beat that. One of the things that I find more difficult today than in the past is when you're talking to someone, they can't look at you anymore, right? So you're having the conversation and they're in the phone or they're nodding their head, but they didn't hear a word you said. I remember not too long ago, I was at a presentation.
Okay.
And I'm listening to what the presentation was supposed to be on. And the presentation happened to be on restaurant service. So they were supposed to be telling you what a server is supposed to do when they get to a table. All right. So I was in the restaurant business for just about all of my life. So I'm really, really into this. And I'm listening to the whole thing. And about midway through, so it was probably a 6 or 7 minute presentation, but I'm in the 3rd or 4th minute and I'm listening to the whole thing and I'm saying to myself, holy crap, they're not talking about the server. They're talking about bartenders. And I was like, I listened for 3 or 4 minutes, nodding my head or agreeing with something. And it wasn't even the subject I went there for because I wasn't paying attention to the details. And I think because of my experience, I'm listening to what they're saying. And I'm already in my mind saying, well, they should say this and they should say this and they should add this. And by the way, if you do this and you do this. So I was in my mind trying to imagine what this person should be saying rather than what they were saying. What they were saying. So it's
that reminds me of a conflict I had a few years back with a friend who had deeply, deeply hurt me. And when I confronted her, I confronted her with pain, and she came back at me like a pit bull. I mean, it was not what I was expecting. I was expecting her to be a little defensive and maybe deflect and maybe not tell the truth. I kind of had caught her in a lie, but maybe she wasn't going to admit it. I did not expect the rash that I got. And what potentially, I don't know, I'll never know, what potentially may have been able to be resolved on some level, whether that friendship was kept at a different, maybe not as a deep, but more of a cordial level, or even to get the friendship back, it was gone. Because the second she attacked me and started making herself bigger, louder, more powerful, it turned from what I was hurt to, you completely disrespected me.
Right.
You are cursing at me, you're screaming at me, you're accusing me of things that aren't true. And it turned into, I'm done here. You're
checked out.
I'm checked out. I'm absolutely done with you. You have shown a side said to yourself that I don't ever want your toxicity in my life.
Right.
Because now it didn't become about the argument. It
Right.
became about her response.
Right.
You know, it's okay to disagree with people, but you show your some true colors when you disrespect people like that. And if you're not willing to hear someone out or you disregard their feelings, you know, why would someone stick around for that?
Right. Right.
I mean, I'm certainly not going to. It was over that day. It was
Right.
over the second I hung up that phone. And even if, you know, she didn't, but even if she had come back to me with a bouquet of flowers and a note, that person was no longer safe to me.
Right.
That person said some really hurtful, awful things that had nothing to do with the subject that
Because
mattered.
they attacked you, right?
Because they attacked me.
Right. And once
Rather
people
than kind of
attack you,
sitting back and going, okay, I messed up. And you know what? You're right. Or even if she had said, you know what? I can't discuss this right now. I'm really, really
Sure.
hurt that you would even accuse me.
Sure.
But let's come back and talk about this later. Fine. You know, but to curse at me and scream at me, like, you're done. You're done.
Right.
I don't need that toxicity in my life. Life is too hard.
No, it's hard enough as it is, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, is there a way that you can, I don't know, how do you tell people there's a difference between listening and hearing, and is there a way to tell when you're talking to somebody whether or not they're actually hearing you, or because it's so hard today because people don't look you in the eye when they're having
Because people are so distracted.
They're distracted, and it's really.
And I think we all, because of cell phones, I think we all have developed ADHD.
Okay.
You know, we all have decreased attention spans. I think they say the average look on a reel is 4 to 5 seconds.
Yeah.
That's scary.
And they're going to decide whether or not they're going to finish
yeah, so
watching.
you
or
haven't
something.
even finished your sentence, and that person has already decided
Right.
what their rebuttal is going to
Right.
be. We're not hearing each other. We need to be quiet.
And they're passing not a judgment in a bad way, but they're making a decision based on that short snippet of what they saw or what they heard, right?
Right.
And that's what makes it more difficult too, I think, now for people to have real connections with people because,
Yes.
so what? She was mad at me. Okay, that's okay. I'll just go over here and talk to this one, or I'll go here and talk to this one. There's less of that bonding. There's less of that,
Right.
and that's professional as well as in personal life. It's you know, I could just not talk to you for 3 weeks. I can, you know, and that.
But in the
makes it
grand
hard.
scheme, that's so immature.
It is.
You know.
It is.
I read a quote recently. It was I'm
You read?
gonna
You read?
I'm going to misquote it, but the gist was this: that a confused person stays silent, an unevolved person responds, and a wise person listens.
You know, and only because this is off the cuff, I'm going to go down a different rabbit hole with you. And I was teasing you about reading, and I know you like to read books, right?
I
You
do.
want it in front
read
of
a
you,
lot.
and you want to read. Okay,
Yeah, I like the physical feel of a book.
I listen to books, so you know, in the last couple of years, I've listened to like 136 different books, and sometimes on a Saturday or a Sunday, and my wife Mitzi's home and she's working in the kitchen, and I'm working. Sometimes I'll have my phone on and I'll be listening to it out loud.
Okay.
And she'll say to me, "Do you understand what they're saying? You know, or why are you listening at such a fast speed?" And so what I find myself is I usually wear headphones or earpods or whatever when I'm walking the dogs and I'm listening to it. Is if I listen to it at the regular speed, I don't really pay attention to it.
Oh, really?
So I need to have it at like 1.7, so they're talking faster, and it's actually forcing me to hear what they're saying.
Oh, so is it forcing you to focus more?
Yeah,
Whereas
absolutely.
if they go at normal
If
speed,
they go normal
you start
speed,
to
yeah, I start wandering off. And so, you know, we're having this conversation about hearing, and people say I talk too fast, and
Yeah, you do talk fast.
I do talk fast, and so I don't know if it's because of the way I hear. I don't know. I mean, I'm not a scientist, but I'm going to look that up and see if how you hear is how you speak, or vice versa. I don't know. Maybe I'm just making this crap up, but at the end of the day, I know that you know, if I open up a new audiobook and it says it's going to be 8 hours, no, it's not. It's only going to be 5.5 for me. And,
right.
You know, but I do pay more attention when I speed it up. I can't listen at a regular speed.
My old way of communicating is an immediate regurgitator.
A what?
Immediate regurgitator.
A
So
what?
my old way of communicating is someone says something to me, I have a response.
Is there regurgitation when you throw
Just-
up again?
Yeah, you just give it right, you know, they say something and I say it right back.
Got it.
And now I'm getting better at just slowing it down, slow the tempo. I'm very type A, so I'm always,
Right.
you know, my head's always in a million places, but I'm getting better at, and I have to very consciously do this, is to just hear it and listen to it and then respond slowly, quietly.
You know, again, it's off the cuff. It's like, as we're talking about listening and hearing, and I told you about the audiobook. So when I watch TV, I need to watch TV with captions on.
I do too.
I need to watch with captions on.
I used to not.
And it's I don't know. Again, maybe it's just forcing me to watch it more, but I'm reading as they're talking. So in a way, I guess I'm hearing better because I'm processing it, right? I'm hearing is processing
you're processing it with two senses versus just one.
I wonder what would happen if I shut the
visually and auditory.
Okay.
So you're double processing.
So I wonder if I shut the volume off and if I just read it, no, I wouldn't get the emotion. I wouldn't get the what's that when your voice goes up?
The tone and the affect of your voice.
The affliction.
Whatever.
Yeah, you know what I mean.
I know what you're talking about.
But I wouldn't catch the emotion. But wow. So I guess we figured out different ways of hearing better. We're doing different things and not realizing it. I speed up the thing. I have to watch captions. Amazing.
All right.
Well, I'm done listening.
You have anything more to say?
I'm done listening.
You're done listening to yourself. I'm done listening to you too.
See you next time. Bye. Thanks for watching.